Good evening, everyone. So great to see you. All masked up and ready to go. So great. I would like to begin by, I should tell you, I'm Zoe Elton. I'm Director of Programming for Mill Valley Film Festival, and I'm so happy to see you all here. And there are so many people who make this happen in so many ways. Our members rock. Can I just say thank you to everyone in the room who is a member, everyone in the room who would like to be a member, that can be arranged. Join us. I feel like the family is coming back together again. And your membership in CFI and Mill Valley Film Festival and all the programs that we do is super important. So if you're a member, please give yourself some applause. If you're not, please applaud our members tonight. And I'd also like to send our heartfelt gratitude to our sponsor for this evening, Kaiser Permanente. Thank you, Kaiser. You may have received one of these as you came in just now. So you didn't? I'll give you this one, okay? I have to say, we worked with Netflix a lot. This is a film that they've produced. And in a conversation a week or two ago, I outed myself as being somebody who is a lobby card geek. I love the way that lobby cards tell the story of a film. It's, they're like little works of art. And they said, oh, we're getting some made for White Noise. And I said, oh, yeah, but they're not going to be out until November. But they did something, they went over and above, and they expedited this. They shipped them to these to us overnight so that you could have them this evening. So big shout out to Netflix for going over and above, and indulging my personal fetish for lobby cards, but also I think that's indicative of the way that they go over and above with a lot of people, like the artists that they work with. And tonight, Noah Baumbach. How many of you have read the book that this is based on? Just curious. 3.5 people. Okay. Now, a few more than that. Okay, great. I can't wait for you to see this. But before we get there, I would like to bring someone to the stage to talk about Noah's work and present him with the Mill Valley Film Festival Award for his screenplay adaptation, which is pretty extraordinary. So please welcome our neighbor, filmmaker, musician, activist, and general amazing guy, Boots Riley. Boots, welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for being here.
All right, what's up? So, I'd gone to film school in the early 90s and then did music for 20-something years, thinking I'd never be able to make a movie in the way that I wanted to. And then I saw Squid and the Whale. And subsequently, did I not only think, I could make a movie, but I became a diehard fan of Noah Baumbach and a student of not only the stories and the situations, but his dialogue. A dialogue which injects injects fault and humanity into people in a way that when we watch his characters on screen, we understand a lot more about ourselves and think about ourselves in a different way than some of these, very strategically designed and structured films make us think about humanity, right? So this film you're about to see is not only not an exception to that greatness, but I believe it's a huge step up. And I'm not going to talk too much about it because you should be surprised by it as I was. But what I want to do first is, it's my honor to present Noah Baumbach with the Mill Valley Film Festival Screenwriting Award for this film. We got to practice that toss, right, that we did. Thank you.
Thank you, Boots, for that wonderful introduction and the nice words backstage as well. And thank you, Zoe, for having us. You and Mark. I've been here now a few years and a few different times, and I'm always just had a great time here, and you're gracious, wonderful hosts, and I really appreciate it. And the audiences are amazing, and a good chunk of them I'm related to some of the time. I have I feel like we have people here from Mill Valley, family from Mill Valley, Oakland, yes, and Sacramento and Berkeley. Yeah. What's that? Los Angeles too. Yeah. Well, that doesn't work into my script so well, Nancy. That's my Aunt Nancy. I think the hardest question I ever got from the audience was when I was here for Margot at the wedding, and Nancy raised her hand and kind of mic dropped that whole Q&A. Let's see. Well, I just again. Probably the little you know about the movie, the better. But I did want to say that. Well, I also wanted to just again thank you for this great honor, because I do find screenwriting is easily the loneliest part of filmmaking, and so to share an award with a theater full of people with a movie that's already written and made is a great feeling. And because it was Tolstoy said, I don't like writing, I like having written, and. And I do love filmmaking, and I love doing all of it except the screenwriting. So, no, I do. But I feel, after, occasionally you have a good day and you feel good. But this, it's I feel, I very much appreciate it. And, but I did want to say, just in terms about the movie tonight, that after all that we've gone through over the past couple of years. It's understandable that we might want to lose ourselves in entertainment that comforts us and offers us distractions from everyday life and lets us know that everything is going to be okay. This is not that movie. So I leave you with that. But do enjoy it, and we'll be back afterward to have a chat. So thank you. Thanks for coming out.
That was so great. Please welcome back Noah Baumbach. Sorry about that technical glitch.
Yeah. Credits are important.
They are. Yeah, they're very important, especially these credits. And especially, that is the wildest ending I've seen.
Well, I feel like people deserve it. It's a release at the end of the movie.
When we previewed it for the festival, one of my filmmaker colleagues came out and she said, it almost feels like an homage to Jacques Demy.
The ending?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take it.
Yeah, just that it has that sort of exuberance and the sort of slightly surrealistic sensibility.
Yeah, well, I felt like I'm always interested in movies when, and this is true in other movies that I've made, where the characters or the story maybe arrives at a place that that opens up new possibilities, and it opens up new possibilities for the characters or the people, like a certain kind of emotional psychology that you know, and that's in a kind of more traditional narrative, but that it also maybe opens up possibilities cinematically. Right. And I've done that in other movies where it's much more nuanced. It's much, you know, it's not a full-fledged dance in a supermarket, but it could be something very small, but it's a breakthrough that the filmmaking, the camera also. You know, Frances Ha, for instance, is one. I mean, this is just a random example, but there's a point at the end of the movie, if you've seen the movie, where she finally arrives at her own place in her own apartment, and she's writing out her name on a thing. It's where the title is revealed at the end of the movie, and the camera pushes in on her as she sort of does it, and the camera never moves in on anybody. The camera doesn't, up until that point, that's not part of the language of the filmmaking. It was just a very simple thing, and this was a kind of bigger version of something like that, where that the movie is now able to do something that it couldn't do 10 minutes before.
Yeah. Well, you chose a lot of things that the book perhaps couldn't do. I mean, you know, my understanding is that the book was considered virtually unadaptable for the screen. When did you first read the book, and at what point, you know, was it a challenge that you always wanted to take on, or did that evolve?
No, it didn't even evolve. I mean, I read it when I was a teenager. It was a book my father loved, and he had suggested I read, and I loved it then. And then that was in the late 80s, and then I was randomly rereading it at the end of 2019 and beginning of 2020, and then the pandemic happened, and I was, even before that, I was reading it aloud to Greta. I was like, you can't believe what this is, and listen to this. And then she started rereading it too, and then with the pandemic, I just felt like, you know, this is all, the world is mad, and I don't know, I don't have an original idea. It was after Marriage Story. It was actually the first time in my career I didn't know what I wanted to do right away. And so I thought, like, well, this is all kind of expressed in this book, how I feel about things right now, and and I did it as an exercise. I just thought, well, let's see if this is even possible. And then I kept doing it. And here I am at the Mill Valley Film Festival.
So it's yeah.
Yes.
While others of us were sheltering in place, you were sheltering in this space, essentially.
Right, I was still in place, but I just had the book in front of me. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you said at the beginning, you know, the Tolstoy quote about writing. I mean, did you find this any easier to engage with as a writer because you were adapting it? Because most of you've written your own screenplays. How did that feel? I mean, was that liberating in any way? Or?
I mean, it's easier and harder in a way, because when I'm writing an original script, it's just me, and it's just awful. And it's just the challenge of every day of just like, I mean, who cares? Who cares about this? You know, and then you write it a little more, well, maybe everybody would care about this. And then, no, nobody will care about this. That basically toggles back and forth, and then you have a script, and then you show it to some people, and they're like, I care about this. And you're like, okay, well, we'll make it. With this, what's helpful is you have a collaborator already, because you have somebody who already came up with all this stuff. And but the challenge, particularly with DeLillo, was coming up with sort of cinematic ideas that that captured what he was doing in a literary way. I mean, and knowing that I was good, there were so many great things in the book that I wasn't going to be able to do. I mean, in the beginning, I was aspirational. I was, oh, I've got to include this. I'm going to do, blah, blah, blah. But then after a while, it becomes the screenplay. It becomes your own thing, and then it then it has its own. It's well, what's the movie? And that's, so it's yeah, as I said, it's both easier and also more difficult.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much density in it, and yet I think one of the things that really worked for me is that you start us off in a way that's intensely verbal and intensely rhythmic, and you have to really, really pay attention. But there's something about the rhythm of the language that you set up and that beat that's very, very fast, and that repartee that just completely draws you in. I mean, did you write chronologically, and was that what you wanted to do with us to make sure that we paid attention, to have that rapid fire exchange?
Well, I think it's that thing. It's like either it draws you in or it knocks you out. And it's like, and I think, I think the hope is it draws you in, or if it knocks you out, you'll maybe lean in more on the next one, in the next scene or whatever. It's called white noise. Right. So I was thinking a lot about white noise throughout the whole thing, and I was thinking, there's the great line that Murray has, family is the cradle of the world's misinformation, and which is something that I relate to. It's in many of my movies, this sort of notion of families and family mythologies and the things that we choose to believe, the things that we want to believe, the things that we're told. Squid and the Whale is that. It's the things that you want to believe these things about your parents, and at the same time, maybe it's not what it is. Maybe it's not what it seemed to be, and you have to come up with your own reality. And I think that's throughout all of my movies, and it's in DeLillo's novel, but it's done in a way where I think, in a sense, family is a kind of representation of the culture certainly American culture, and this sort of notion of what is reality, what is truth, and so I saw an opportunity cinematically to, we mic'd everybody talked at once, and on one hand I feel like, well, that's what a family feels like at breakfast, right. When the first family scene, for instance, which is early in the movie. Everybody's going, everyone knows what they're doing, and we choreographed it. And the same choreographer who choreographed the dance, David Newman, also worked on all the individual scenes with me, the Hitler Elvis, all the sort of family stuff. And I thought, well, we've already shown car crashes, so it's also like the near misses, it's the collisions that family, it's the movement within space. And at the same time, they're all speaking, and we have this sort of white noise of conversation, but it's also a great cinematic thing. It's something Robert Altman did brilliantly, this sort of, where you can kind of decide to listen to what they're saying, or you can kind of lean back and just sort of let it all become sound and music and talk. And so I saw that opportunity throughout the movie to kind of, to play with those sort of elements.
Yeah. It has a very musical quality, and in the same way that music will have, a bass line and a rhythm line and a percussive line, it feels like this is working on a lot of different levels, and I think that's one of the things that perhaps is why it actually is a book that could be transcribable to screen, because what you bring to it is the cinematic part of it.
Right.
So what were the cinematic parts of it that you've just thought, I can do this with this off this page?
Well, what also DeLillo does is takes a kind of American vernacular, right. The slang, the the stuff off television. I mean, it's from the 80s, it's stuff off television, stuff off radio, sports, and how we both echo that, how it's surrounding us all the time. It's playing all the time around us, but also how we start to use that in our own language. And I saw, and he does it also with the narrative. The narrative is science fiction, it's noir, it's family drama, it's family comedy. And so, and also what he's doing, and he's writing in the 80s, and he's doing a kind of future 80s. It's this sort of heightened world. Right. It's sort of everybody's kind of floating above the ground. And now I'm making the movie here in, 2021, 22, and it's the past, but it's the future past. It's this sort of odd thing. And I felt like, well, also this was a time when I was a teenager and I was discovering movies. I'm now the age of, my dad was when he was, Jack Gladney in 1985. I'm in this sort of, so I'm thinking, well, I'm going to use the language of movies to, and sort of, so I'm going to run at all of these genre elements and use movie language to tell it. So when it's a noir, as it becomes at the end, I'm going to do it that way. I'm not going to hide, I'm just going to go right into that. I'm going to do, the science fiction elements. I'm going to do the family comedy, the family drama, the jump and the thing. I mean, you read the book, you're like, well, this is Clark Griswold and, in the vacation movies, anytime a guy's driving, your father's driving a car and everybody's yammering and you're on a you're on a journey. So I was like, well, I've got to, include that. But I don't mean it referentially. I just mean it's a kind of language from movies that was available to me to use in telling the story.
I know, it's so great to see one of your films have that sort of sensibility of science fiction. I mean, and even though the book was in the 80s, I mean, it felt to me like, that tonally that it went back to some of those sort of like wonderful 50s and 60s sci-fi films that are, just wacky. Really, but
well, and the cloud, I was like, I don't want to do a whole like kind of some digital thing. I mean, it's of course it's created in post-production, but we used all this cloud tank stuff, so it's real cloud stuff, and it's a matte painting, and it's I wanted it to feel like, contemporary, but also have elements of what I like about old special effects.
Yeah, and the train crash is
yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean,
we crashed a truck into a train. This is the first and last movie I will do that on. You heard it here.
I just have to tell you, when I was like 18, I was hitchhiking in France in a truck, and we started coming down a road, and a train was coming, and the things started coming down, and the truck's brakes went out, and we went onto the train track, and they just managed to get the truck off the track before the train came through. I mean, the train did not stop. But seeing your film, it was like acid flashbacks. but I wondered, but then when I see the film, it's like the crash of goes on and on and on. Did you ever think that you would actually shoot a train crash like that?
Well, and that's not in the book even. I mean, the aftermath, of course, is in the book, but I felt like, because I had the idea of starting the movie with the car crashes and the Murray's lecture, that if you do that, you have to do a crash. You can't, I'm sure Godard said something like that. Yeah, and so I felt like, well, we have to show it, and so then in developing the whole Hitler Elvis lecture, I felt like in a way Jack is summoning death. I think the first part of the movie is about how we, the strategies and the sort of rituals that we sort of develop and create for ourselves to not acknowledge our mortality, or not to really deal with it or contend with it in any way. And part two is, well, death comes anyway, no matter how many times you go to the supermarket, you know. And then part three is, well, you've seen that, you've dodged it for now, but can you go back to the same way of doing things? Which I certainly felt was maybe relevant to what we've all just gone through.
Well, it is, and thank you for that. And it gives us so much, you know, we will never be the same, and your film will never let us be the same. Noah Baumbach, thank you so much.
Thank you, Zoe. Yeah. Thank you very much.